In this video, I'll be sharing 5 ways that sewing has changed my life. Sewing is truly a beautiful way to spend your time. Whether you spend 5 minutes sewing or you spend your whole lifetime sewing, you can create some really amazing, really beautiful things. You can create garments, accessories, textile art, and countless other things with sewing. So if you haven't started sewing, then I definitely recommend that you do. This is going to be a very sit and chat ramble style video, so yeah, tuck in, grab a tea. I'm going to be chatting about my sewing journey so far, how sewing currently fits into my life, what type of schedule that I have, and then the top 5 reasons why sewing has changed my life. There's so many different ways, big and small, but these are the top 5 that come to mind, and also the top 5 reasons that you should already be sewing. At the end of this video, I'll also give some advice for those who are wanting to start sewing. So anyway, let's get into it. I'll give you the backstory for my sewing journey. Feel free to use the timestamps if you're not interested in that and you just want to skip to the reasons. I won't be offended. But yeah, let's get into it. So my sewing journey so far. Well, it's been quite a journey. Long story short, I have loved the idea of sewing for literally since I was probably 10 years old. However, I haven't actively been sewing except for probably the past year or so. So I'd like to just take you on that journey in my mind from when I first kind of learnt about sewing and fashion and then to how I got to where I am today. So when I was young, one of the 2 things that I loved was clothes and the other one was just general crafts. So on the clothes front, I would be changing my outfit multiple times a day as like a 7-year-old, and my mum found it kind of infuriating because my room would be just filled with all of these clothes. It would just be messy constantly. And also I was really adamant about the specific clothes that I wanted to wear. So I think I had a strong sense of personal style from a young age. My other love was craft. So I was always doing some sort of craft kit that I got for my birthday. For example, latch hooking or knitting or anything like that. Scrapbooking, origami. It's just in my blood, obviously. Anyway, we'll track forward to year 8. I was in my technology class and we were doing a unit called textiles and design. And well, you can guess what happened. I fell in love with sewing then. Basically, we had an assignment and we had to create a denim tote bag. That was the first time that I'd ever really used a sewing machine. It worked out really well. It was lined with this beautiful tie-dye cotton that we tie-dyed, and then the outer piece of the bag was denim, but we could decorate the front flap however we wanted. I did really well in that assignment and I went really ham on decorating the front flap. I had heaps of buttons, heaps of different trims, different fabrics, and I created this picture of this garden wall with all these little pot plants and different vines and that kind of vibe. I could practice my hand embroidery as well. My teacher was really impressed, and yeah, I was really impressed with just sewing and all the things that you can do with sewing. After that class, I didn't have the opportunity to study any sort of textiles again in high school, and then by the time I went to uni, I decided to study economics. But in the back of my brain was always this desire and curiosity to learn more about fashion design in particular. I would often research courses and had the idea that I would do something on the side. But while I was in Canberra, which is a little bit of a small city, there weren't that many options available. While I was at uni, I did borrow my mum's sewing machine on occasion, and I would just dabble in altering my clothes or creating really basic garments for different college bar nights, but there was nothing super drastic. I do remember trying to draft my own dress once, but I had no idea about sewing patterns, so it was just fully based off draping on my own body, and I would say that the construction was very sketch. Anyway, once I finished uni, I got a job in Melbourne, and so I moved here. And as you might know, Melbourne is considered as Australia's fashion capital, so there were way more opportunities than in Canberra for me to learn about sewing and design on the side. So that's when I decided to do a course at the Australian Academy of Fashion Design, and I've created a separate video about that, so if you're interested you can check that out here. But yeah, that course is really the point where I started to take sewing more seriously and I started to actually carve out space for it in my life properly. I did that course from halfway through 2022 to the start of 2023 from memory. So I finished it about a year and a half ago now. And since that time, I've started sewing a lot more regularly. At the start, I was doing a lot of thinking about sewing. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, reading books, and kind of getting an understanding of the skills that I needed to practice. I still had a bit of hesitation to actually dive into it. But then at the end of 2023, I had a few house projects like creating covers for our dining room chairs, creating a new ottoman cover, and those really kick-started things. So this year I've done the most sewing that I've ever done in my life, and I've been enjoying it so much, and I really just want to continue. I want to create more time for it, and I want to see what I can do and what I can make, and I'm just so excited for that journey. So how does sewing currently fit into my life? Well, at the moment I work full-time, so sewing is something that I do either in the evenings or on the weekends, depending on how busy my weekends are. It's something that's really important to me, so I do make the time to prioritize it. I am pretty chill about my life, so I don't want to be gung-ho or anything. I don't have mad schedules that I stick to in terms of output or garments that I need to create or things like that. Pretty much I'm happy if I do something sewing related every week. That could be actually being on the machine, or it could be planning, fabric shopping, or a bit of YouTube editing as well. The point of this is to say that even if you have a really busy schedule, you can find time for sewing if you want to, and it only has to be little pockets of time here and there. Sewing is really great in the fact you can leave a project for a while if you're just really busy, and then you can pick it up when you're ready to spend time on it again. But that is kind of leading me into the benefits of sewing. So without further ado, I'll tell you my top 5 ways that sewing changed my life. Number 1, sewing has reignited my creativity, and I'm so pleased that this has happened. I think throughout university and moving into a corporate job, everything became quite routine. I started becoming more minimal. I only wanted to wear neutral colored things. I bought an iPad so that I could journal digitally, which meant that I just kind of stopped journaling. When I used to journal in a physical journal all the time, there were all of these little ways in which turning into an adult and falling into a busy pattern in life, I was just losing my creativity. But my decision to do that fashion course and then to actively start sewing in the last year or so has made me feel more alive in my spirit in that creative side. I'm not joking. I feel so much better and well-rounded as an individual now that I've been sewing again. On this vein, I feel more equipped to problem solve, because doing things like craft, you're always having to find different ways to do things and to adapt on the go. I feel a lot more confident in saying that I'm a creative person now as well, because I have something to show for it. When I was young, I was constantly creating different artworks and when I was young, I was constantly creating different artworks and pieces like that where I could show friends and family if they wanted to know what I was working on. But in uni, when I said, oh yeah, I'm really creative, people would be like, oh really? Like, what do you do? Like, how are you creative? And I would be like, oh shit, I don't actually have anything to show you right now. And that always felt quite detrimental to me and my self-identity. So yes, sewing has helped me be more creative, and it's also helped me to feel more confident in my creativity. Sorry for the lighting change. It's totally gotten dark outside all of a sudden, and you couldn't pick it. I guess it's just an overcast day. So number 2, sewing has given me a much greater appreciation for the fashion industry and also for different fashion brands. I have a better understanding of fast fashion versus slow fashion now, and a clearer idea within myself of where I want to spend my money. For example, I'm a lot more conscious when shopping now about looking at garment construction in terms of quality, and then also looking at the fabric content in terms of staying away from polyesters and moving more towards cottons and linens and things like that. I also think generally I have this strong aspiration to have a beautiful me-made wardrobe, and whilst I only have a few pieces in there so far, I'm confident that I can get somewhere where I love. Whereas before, when I would go shopping, I just constantly felt like more. My wardrobe isn't where I want it to be. and it was quite disheartening. When I was young, I used to shop at places like Supre and H&M when it first came to Australia, and spent a lot of money in fast fashion. Obviously, I didn't have a lot of money myself then, and I wanted to, stay up to date with the trends. And then in uni, when I was working more, I started having more interest in local Australian brands, in designer brands, and that was a lot of fun for a while, having beautiful pieces in your wardrobe. But it was also very expensive, and that's just not something that I could ever sustain or feel comfortable sustaining. So I think conceptually I was at a bit of a loss as to where I wanted to be with my wardrobe and my personal style. And as someone who has loved fashion for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable giving up on the industry as a whole. But I feel like with sewing, I'm much more connected to my clothes and connected to my personal style, and I feel like I am participating in the fashion industry in a way that feels right for me and that I'm not troubled by, I suppose. So yeah, that's a benefit of sewing that you could also definitely experience. This takes me to number 3, which is that through sewing you have a better sense of what your personal style is, and that can evolve over time as what you create evolves with it. Because you get to literally pick every single detail of a garment, what cuff length, how wide the seams are, if there are pockets, no pockets, what type of waistband there is. You literally get to curate everything, which means you're making all of these decisions, which can be a little bit daunting sometimes, but it means the finished product is something that is completely you in terms of functionality, in terms of aesthetic, and in terms of longevity as well. So that's been a really, really awesome side effect of sewing. Number 4, there's definitely a financial payoff to sewing, particularly if you're sewing your own clothes. So now I have a relative level of sewing skill. I'll often walk into a shop and have a look at the garment and be like, wow, this is like $200, but I can definitely make it for way cheaper. And I can make it in a way that suits me. I'm not going to laud this point too much because anyone else who sews knows that you can spend so much money on fabric, especially if it's nice fabric, and also just on other sewing supplies in general. So there are definitely ways in which sewing is more expensive than just buying your own clothes. But if you care about quality and you care about having unique pieces, it's definitely going to work out in your favor financially 9 times out of 10. That's my experience so far anyway, and it's definitely a reason why I'm motivated to continue sewing. Number 5, when you sew, you are part of such a beautiful sewing community, particularly if you are linked in on any sort of social media platform like YouTube, Instagram. There are literally so many beautiful sewers out there being super creative all of the time, making amazing things that you would never even believe, never even imagine. And they're all out there supporting each other, giving each other inspiration, giving each other tips and tricks. I'm someone who's never participated in social media very much at all. I hardly have Facebook or Instagram on my phone, and I pretty much never have, but I'm finally finding some joy in Instagram because there's all of these amazing creators there and amazing people making creative, awesome garments. If you like this video, then please support this channel by subscribing or hitting the like button below. It would really help me out. Maybe I can get one of those ring lights so that the lighting isn't so bad. I'm so sorry. I would really appreciate it, and then you can see more fashion, design, and sewing content like this. Another way that sewing makes you feel connected to community is that people in your existing family and friend group will be quite inspired by this. It's not just your run-of-the-mill hobby like, hey, I started playing tennis, watch my awesome serve. No, you suddenly started making all of your own garments. You've got pants, you've got tops, you've got a cute little purse you made, and people are like, wow, you made that? That's awesome. And suddenly people are like, can you make this for me? Can you make this for me? Can you make this for me? And it gets kind of overwhelming, and personally I don't even have the time to create that many things, but it's such a privilege and such an honor that people see what you're doing and they're excited by it and they want to participate in it. I think sewing is quite unique in that sense, and that's why it's such an awesome activity. Like, people are going to get around you, I promise. And then the final point on this kind of human connection theme is that people have been sewing for generations. And I don't just mean the fact that you're going to have a bond with your mum and your grandma and your grandma's grandma. I mean the fact that in society, people have needed clothes since way back when. I don't even know when. Now I'm kind of interested. I kind of want to make a whole video on the history of clothes. Maybe I'll investigate that first and see how difficult that would be. But the point is, it's amazing. This is an age-old craft, and it's something that you can be participating in as well. What could make you feel more connected to other human beings, to other times, to the planet than that? I don't even know. Sewing is astounding. That's the point that I'm driving home here. Those are my 5 reasons why sewing has completely changed my life and why you should start sewing yourself. If you are a beginner and you want to get into sewing, then I'd recommend checking out a few videos on YouTube about how to get set up, and then don't overthink it. Just buy a few supplies, borrow your friend's sewing machine, and create something really simple to start off with, like the tote bag that I made back in high school, or like a little coin purse or a scrunchie, or something that you can create and say, hey, I've done it, I've sewed something, this was awesome, I'm gonna keep going. That's all from me today, and thank you so much for watching.